Okay, we're back. We're live. It's Thursday. I'm Jay Fidell, having a good time every day. And with me is Duane Yee. Duane is the executive director of Variety School. Somehow, I'm looking forward to this discussion, Duane. Welcome to the show.
Thank you much. I am too.
I want to be mellow. Driving in and listening to the BBC has this program about river barges, and they put a camera on the barge, and everybody in the country can watch as the barge goes down the river. It's
really?
like watching a haircut,
Oh, really exciting, yeah.
So let's be mellow today, okay?
All right, let's be mellow. I'm good. I'm good with mellow.
So we're going to call this is Aloha United We Stand, which is one of my favorite shows, and it's about the various nonprofits around the community that are funded, in part at least, by Aloha United Way. And today is about Variety School. And the title of our show, which we will explain, is Learning Differences, Not Disabilities. Okay, we're going to teach you a little bit, hopefully you know some already, but about Variety School, which is an important part of the educational landscape in our community.
Great. We're ready.
Okay, we're ready. So tell us about your background.
My background? Well, I've always been a private school guy. I was 41 years at Punahou School. Taught there right out of college, fortunately, a long time ago. I was an English teacher. Taught 8th grade English most of the time. But I soon became an administrator there for most of my years, I would say. I was there 41 years. My last stop there, my last position there was as the junior school principal for the last 24 years. And before that, I was an administrator by being what is called a supervisor of grades 5 and 6. That's when, incidentally, Barry Obama was admitted. And so he flourished under my wing for a couple of years as a 5th and 6th grader. And I placed him, as a matter of fact, with a mentor of mine who became his favorite teacher, a lady named Mabel Hefty, whom he just loved. But it was a slam dunk for me because it was easy to place the only kid who was half Kenyan with a lady who had done 2 trips to Kenya on her own. Yeah, she loved Kenya. Really, Mabel became his favorite teacher. He's written about her in his biography.
Really? So when you see him give a speech or do some public act, do you see traits that you saw back years ago?
Nope.
He's different now.
Except that he's brilliant. Yeah. And you could always tell he was brilliant. But he was just a playful, bright kid then. Yeah. It was really kind of interesting.
So, all that considered, in the great tradition of Punahou, which is also a big part of the educational landscape of our state. A bigger part, if you will, because there's more people involved. Yep. How do you feel about the library? Does it trouble you that he made another choice in another geographic location with which he did not have the same connection?
Well, he had some very important connections there. I can find very little fault with the guy who's risen to his prominence, with his intellect, with his background, being as exceptional as he has been. I'm a fan. I'm sorry, I'm a fan.
It's okay. A lot of fans.
I am, very definitely. And obviously a lot of his thinking, I mentioned to you earlier that I just seen a 15-minute film of a lady who's done one about Barry Barack and his Hawaii connections and how that has affected his political decisions. It's a brilliant little film. You must try to get that.
I'm sure there's a connection, because Hawaii leaves an impression on everyone it touches.
It does.
Changes your way of looking at things.
It really does.
Yeah. Well, so let's move forward.
Okay.
So at some point after 41 years, I emphasize that because it's a long time.
Okay.
I practiced law for 41 years too.
Good.
We have something.
Good. We have something in common. We're both Asian.
So you decided you're going to retire. That was the retirement?
It was an early retirement, a little bit earlier than I had expected, but there was an early retirement benefit to make sure they cut all the old guys out who loved Punahou so much that they stayed around for a long time. So they gave you a window of a special benefit, and I left the last year that ended. And I'd always thought, well, I still have some rubber on the tires. I'll look around and try to do something and be useful. I thought of retiring to the golf course. You can't really do that.
No.
It's really hard to do.
No, it undermines your whole way of looking at things.
But the people at Variety School were having a tough time. They were almost, and here's an old organization founded in 1961, a very, very unique one in the community. And I'd always been interested in kids with learning differences. I was spurred on by a national figure who became a mentor of mine, a doctor, a developmental pediatrician named Mel Levine, who was just brilliant, and I just loved him. That's where I get the term, he pounded the term learning differences into our heads, and I said, you're right, everybody's different, but not, you know, when you call kids disabled, that's such an injustice. And as an English teacher, I hate words like that and labeling kids automatically. They come in the door at Variety School with that label. And, you know, when I interview parents, my program director and I do that for admissions, and oftentimes when I just use that term with parents, they immediately cry. I mean, I have had parents, I have to have the Kleenex box ready because they know that we understand that these kids have differences and they have great abilities and they all have something to offer, you know, and that's the joy of a place like Variety School.
So you made the decision to do learning differences.
Yes.
Before making the decision to join Variety School?
Right, because they came and asked me, and we'd already preached Mel Levine's work at Punahou a lot, and we brought Mel to Hawaii, as a matter of fact, had him do workshops for both private and public sector, because, again, he was so brilliant and so influential to us. He was on Oprah a lot of the times and stuff like that, and he was just a very, very bright and caring guy. So,
are you also saying, though, that we can discuss this further as we go, but that in Hawaii, as an educational community, we don't pay enough attention to the issue?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Even in what we call neurotypical education now, as opposed to the children with disorders that we have at Variety School. Even there, not enough is paid attention to differences. I abhor standardization. Generally, I think modern education is much too standardized. When you standardize, you even standardize. For example, we don't even have grade levels at Variety School. Why have grade levels? A kid who's 7 years old is supposed to know everything that a kid on a standardized test supposedly knows up in Larchmont, New York, or someplace like that. For gosh sake, that's silly. So we emphasize teaching children for life rather than for the next grade level. And so we group kids developmentally. We don't group them by grade levels. That's a bit of artifice that's only necessary because we have universal education, right?
Yeah.
I always tell parents, most of them are younger than I, and I say, you're younger than I am. I'll bet you anything you can teach me as much as I can teach you because you've had a different set of experiences than I have. You've been educated differently. You do a different kind of job. Why can't we teach each other? How many times have I wanted to be able to do my own plumbing or fix my automobile instead of paying through the nose? On the other hand, what can I do that some of those artisans cannot?
Yeah.
Maybe write a paper, but to them that's a big deal too. They'd laugh as much as we're laughing about my doing plumbing, right? That's the way it goes. And there's a lot of things that are bass-ackwards about education, I think.
I'm driven to tell you a short story.
Good.
Okay? It's about a brain surgeon. Has a splendid house, but the plumbing goes bad. He calls the plumber. The plumber comes and slides under the counter there, and he hits the pipe, slides out, and he says, it's fixed. The brain surgeon says, that's wonderful. All you did was slide in and out, and you fixed it. That's fabulous. What do I owe you? Plumber says, $1,500. And the brain surgeon says, $1,500? I'm a brain surgeon. I don't make that kind of money. And the plumber said, yeah, when I was a brain surgeon, I didn't make that kind of money either.
I like it. I like it. I like it.
We
That
can
goes
all-
well with our school. It goes well with our school.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so, and that was 18 years ago.
Yes.
So.
In fact, I retired in between.
You're one of those guys that keeps on
Well,
retiring and coming back.
I like retirement parties because they have to say nice things about you. I've had a couple now, and I'm looking forward to my next.
Retirement.
Right.
Sounds terrific.
Well, I retired because the school had been in really dire straits financially. It had been, honestly, mismanaged, and this was a shame to see this school go under. So the board members who knew me or knew of me came and interviewed me and asked me if I'd come and help out. I said, I have a steep learning curve. I've always been interested in kids who have learning differences, but I haven't worked in the field. I'm inspired by the work that I've done with Mel Levine, for example, and if you tolerate that, I'll give it a shot. And I thought I'd be there 3 years and maybe move on and see if I could get it in shape. Well, in a couple of years, we got it back on its feet. It was very much in the red. We got it back on its feet, and people seemed happy with what we were doing, even though we were doing some interesting and somewhat different things. I tried to keep abreast of the work, did the best I could. And after 8 years, I thought, well, you know, things are in pretty good shape financially and educationally and program-wise. So I retired and had a nice retirement party, and then things didn't quite work out with my successor, and I got a phone call in the spring.
Come back.
And they said, can you come back? Our new person is retiring, or is leaving at the end of the year. And I said, well, yeah, I love the people and I love the work. If you need me, I'll come. So I said, so you want me to come in June when the school year ends? And they said, no. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, how about yesterday? It was that kind of thing, you know? And I said, you tell me when you want me to be there. I'll be there. I'm interested. I'm free. I can come back. So that was 8 years, after 8 years. So that was what would have been my ninth.
There.
So
no ambivalence there.
No, no. I love the people, the parents, the teachers, the kids. You know, it was a real joy, and it has been. It's been, you know, as you say, I was a long time at Punahou, and I love that. Otherwise, I wouldn't have stayed that long. But on the other hand, I tell all my colleagues, my ex-colleagues there, when I run into them and they ask me about variety school, I say, you know, I have to be honest with you. In the time that I've been at variety school, I think I've learned more, actually more about learning, the art and the science of learning, than I did in 41 years at Punahou. That's not to denigrate my 41 years at Punahou, but you just have to have that kind of focus when you're working with kids with these dramatic brain differences.
And after this break, we're going to identify some of those differences.
Okay.
And we're going to identify how you deal with them and the gratification of doing that.
Okay.
That's Duane Yee. He's the Executive Director of Variety School. Here on Aloha United We Stand, learning differences, not disabilities. We'll be right back.
Inspired by an ancient culture, classical Chinese dance, vigorous physicality, timeless stories, 5,000 years of Chinese music and dance. Shen Yun presents authentic Chinese culture. Coming to Blaisdell Concert Hall, May 8th and 9th. Tickets at shenyun.com or call 808-792-3919.
Aloha, I'm Hunter Hevlin, host of Sustainable Hawaii here at ThinkTech Hawaii. You can tune in every week on Thursday at 2 p.m. to see interviews with sustainability professionals from around the state and even further abroad, learning about activities with water management, food security, waste management, and a whole host of other fascinating opportunities to get engaged with making a greener island. So if you're interested in making the transition from consuming individuals to communities of producers, check us out every Thursday.
Okay, we're back. We're live. We're here with Duane Yee. He's the Executive Director of Variety School near Diamond Head, in the back of Diamond Head. And we're doing Aloha United We Stand today at the 12 to 1 block on Thursdays always. And we're talking about learning differences, not disabilities. So let's talk about exactly what you got there. What is, you know, give us the container at Variety School.
Okay.
What's happening?
The children we found we're most successful with are children who are high-functioning autistic, who have developmental delays, who have attention deficit, who have speech delays, various disorders and or differences that we call them. But we have to intuitively, as we talk to parents in the admissions process, and we almost never need to see the child. We
Really?
find, yeah.
The parents will
Almost
tell you. Yeah.
They will tell us, and we'll find out, they'll bring in paperwork from the school. They're often escapees from a school where the child, of course, is not successful. And what we do is we program children, we teach children by programming them as individuals. When we hire teachers, for example, we tell them, you're gonna do the hardest, and I've taught, in the classroom, you're gonna do the hardest kind of teaching you've ever done, because we don't give you a program and inflict that onto the kids, because it's not one size fits all. That's standardization. And standardization doesn't work, especially when you have kids with dramatic learning differences, dramatic disconnects in the brain, and science is telling us that. Neuroscience now is wonderful. It's one of the best times in the world, maybe the best times ever, to be a teacher and an educator, because there's validation about those differences. They can see it. They do MRIs, et cetera, So at any rate, we tell parents, just tell us about your child. Tell us here's another thing that draws my Kleenex box when I talk to parents. I say, I'm gonna ask you a question. I usually start with moms before dads, and we like both of them to come, because sometimes there are different perceptions about the child, and that gives us a better picture. And I always start by asking moms, because I've learned in my years, women first, mothers first. There's a different and more special bond. And I apologize to the fathers. I say, you and I, we didn't carry the child around for 9 months with us. And I'll ask a question such as, what do you like best about your child? Sometimes that brings tears to mother's eyes, to father's eyes too, because they've never expected that. Yeah. They don't expect. Well, that tells us a lot, because it tells us how they deal with their child, why there's difficulty. Is there conflict in the home that's exacerbated or even created by the school experience? Those kinds of things. So this is how my program director and I actually interview parents in the admissions process. And so all these differences that I've described, the kinds of differences, even if you describe a child or identify a child as autistic, that's a spectrum. What's a spectrum? There's a huge range, right? What's sauce for the goose is not sauce for the gander, et cetera. And that's true. So we try to teach our teachers, you start with the child. Take some time, find out how usually it's a he, but because there are more boys than girls, but we have girls too. And you find out how that child learns. The best way you know how. Use your brains, use your intuition, and then try to teach that child that way. Now, we have small classes, we max out our classes at the whole school at maybe 45. So you might have a class of 3 kids if it's the youngest. You might have a class, the largest class might be 10. And you have a teacher assistant working with you. But doggone it, we'd kill our teachers if we said, you must have a learning program for every single child every single day. You can't do that. But so, the next big question is, well, then how do you account for the differences if you don't do that? I said, you do it attitudinally. First of all, you individualize or you die trying. Secondly, so that you don't kill yourself, yes, it's okay to give 6 kids 1 lesson. But if you give 6 kids a lesson, say on, I don't know, mathematics, addition, subtraction, whatever, the kid that gets 100 correct, 100% correct, may not be the kid that's learning the best. That exercise might be too easy for him, and you've missed the boat. The kid that got 50% may have made the most progress because last week he got 40%. That's the kid that really should be honored, because he's gone 10% better, and he's made that much of a stride in his learning. That's how you individualize as an example. And each kid, our kids have meltdowns.
A meltdown?
Yeah, you know that term? Well, that's a common term.
Is it a decompensate kind of thing?
They get angry, they flip tables, they throw things, when they can't communicate. How do we handle that? We try to redirect them to something that they can understand. And then later on, we try to find out what it was that was the trigger. And how do you do that? Well, we're the only school that has, as our staff, permanently, therapists. We have a therapeutic staff. Occupational therapist. When I went to variety school first, I thought, what in the world is an English teacher? Yeah, they're teaching them occupations? No. I found out what an occupational therapist is, who works with small motor and large motor coordination, works with things like posture, things that really count and make the kid feel successful. Everything that a child is successful in adds to his or her education.
Reinforce that. Yeah.
They're learning, right. Yeah. We have a speech pathologist. That doesn't mean they just teach kids to articulate. I generalize that way too. Speech pathologist, kid got a stutter? Well, it's not just that stuff. It's language and how you use it and how you receive it and how you understand it, and telling jokes even. A lot of our kids don't know how to tell jokes or know when there is a joke. And especially a child, say, in the autism spectrum, for example. Humor escapes them. Everything is very, very literal, that sort of thing. So the kinds of standardization that exist in almost every typical school, we abhor and we stay away from. We try to really give the kids what they need, as I say, for life, for their next step in life. And their next step in life is not third grade. It's not sixth grade. It's not those are artificial things. Just teach them what you think they need to learn. And we pay attention to state standards. The state standards are okay because that's what's out there in the general public. And if they go back into the general public after they leave variety school, they have to know those kinds of things. And we have to make them as aware as we can of those elements that they can understand and can learn. And we usually do a pretty good job. I never tell parents, when you leave here, we're going to guarantee that your child can make a score on this standardized test or whatever. We say simply, what we are really trying to do is get your child to acknowledge and receive the fact that he is a learner, that he can learn his way, that he's successful, that if he doesn't, and you teach him about standardized tests and the like if they're moving out, but if he doesn't succeed at the median, that doesn't mean he's a failure. All it is a score. It's just a number. And it just tells you how much more you need to go if you want to get to another number. You don't treat it as if it's a life-threatening thing. And we try very hard to do that.
I have a million questions for you.
Please.
So when they come to you, they come in a specific grade or any grade?
They have come from a grade, but we immediately just regroup them to room A, B, C, D, E. And we tell the parents, we're grouping them according to what we think their development is. And we're so small, we can move them even from month to month if we want to, because it's very family-oriented. We only have one school building. It's a cool building. It's constructed specifically for kids with needs.
That's great.
Yeah.
You put them in this kind of, it's a group thing. It's all body, everybody together.
Everybody knows everybody. Everybody goes out at recess at the same time. Everybody helps everybody else. Sometimes, for example, sometimes younger kids really have a terrific response to older kids. So we arrange for that kind of thing to occur. Sometimes an older kid can really benefit and likes younger kids and can really benefit from helping to teach younger kids. So we arrange those kinds of things. We have these cross elements all the time. Our speech pathologist, our our occupational therapist, and we have a gross motor therapist who's called an adapted PE teacher. He doesn't teach he teaches some of the usual stuff, but he looks at different elements from physical education. And the fourth element, the fourth member of what we call our therapeutic staff comes from, and we just created this the last 3 years. One of my most experienced teachers, we gave her this position of a reading coach. Now, I was an English teacher, and I understand the joy of and the need of children to read well and enjoy reading. So she's a coach, and she takes kids individually, as do the other therapists, but she's what a coach is. That is not just instruction, but a lot of motivation. Yeah. And that's helped, because they have reading in the classrooms, obviously, by their classroom teacher. But the ones who really need more of that motivation and a little more of the skill work too, they've come a long way because they have this extra reading coach that's really one-on-one with them and is one of my most experienced teachers and really knows how to handle them. So that's our therapeutic staff, and that's how we can help individualize different kinds of skills. For example, and another thing that everybody must be part of is teaching something that is often neglected in a typical school. Actually teaching kids social skills. Like I was telling you about humor, that's a social skill, understanding that. How to deal with a difference facially. A lot of kids have trouble with that. When somebody makes a face and the kid thinks that's angry, and it's not, you can make all kinds of social mistakes, or the flip side of that. Those are things that every teacher does.
Yeah. So to put them together like this,
yep.
Do they stay in grades? They don't have
Nope.
grades?
Nope.
I mean, how do you say a class of 3 to 10?
Yep.
Who's in the class? Are they all the same age? Are they different
Nope.
ages?
There's usually 2 or 3 chronological age differences, 2 or 3 years difference.
Yeah. So it's based on what? Their ability?
Their
Based on
developmental
status.
status.
Okay. And do they go through the forms, so to speak?
Yep.
And
They go
sort of
from room A to B. Sometimes they go from A to C. Sometimes they go from C back to B. That's
That's
rare.
great, that's great.
That's rare, but that happens once in a while, especially for special needs. If there's a particular need that can be accommodated in room B, you can do that.
How long do they stay at the school?
Well, it varies. We've had kids stay only 1 year because the parents can't afford more, but they think 1 year is going to help, and sometimes it really does. And we hate to see them go because we can see the progress, and we can see how they start to blossom and bloom. But it's expensive. Our tuition with financial aid amounts to about a similar tuition as parents pay at Punahou, Neolani, and Mid-Pacific, which now is around in the low 20,000s.
Per kid, per year?
Per kid. And that's with financial aid, because we have foundations and trusts that have stuck with us over the years. They know us well, and they do add to our financial aid situation, but it gets harder and harder and harder.
To raise the money.
Yes, because there are more and more, what you're doing, more and more nonprofits. And thank you for that, because this is very helpful. Anytime a nonprofit like Variety School can benefit from this kind of exposure, we're really grateful.
We're here for you, Duane.
Let me tell you, it counts a lot. It counts a lot. Everything from cookie sales to selling chili, or having a golf tournament, or begging and borrowing from a foundation, we can use. That's the way we are, because it's expensive. And our teachers are not the highest paid teachers. They're on the lower end of the salary schedule compared to public school teachers.
One would expect that they would have to have greater skills to do what they do at Variety School.
They're taught that way. What we do is we look for teachers who, first of all, we have to feel that they really like kids. I mean, granted, yes, that's true of every teacher in every school, but we really pay special attention to that first. We really have to be convinced that they really like kids, especially our kids who are difficult, okay? And then,
Because the kids can feel it.
yeah,
They
yeah,
can feel it.
exactly
And
right.
It's part of the process.
You're right, exactly right. And besides that, what we do is we look for teachers who are not only bright and intelligent, but who are, and caring, obviously, but who are flexible, who have good intuition, who can teach that way, because as I say, it's the hardest kind of teaching. And we have teachers, because luckily we're an independent school, so they don't have to have special ed degrees. Because sometimes, even if you have a special ed degree, you're stuck in that rut because you teach one way, the way you've been taught. That's not what we want.
Yeah.
That kind of information is good, so they have to have either a special ed degree or experience with kids who have learned differently.
They have to have an education degree, I mean.
No,
degree.
it doesn't have to be.
So,
I have
and
a-
this is a big question.
Yeah,
So I could come to you, Duane, I could say, look, I'm tired of running ThinkTech.
yep,
I want to teach those kids.
Yep.
And you thought I had the intuitive skills.
yep,
You could actually hire me.
I can. That's the
Wow.
joy of being a private school person, and that's how I did it at Punahou too. We had no human resource department at Punahou, believe it or not, when I was there. And now everybody has to have one, even if you have 2 kids in the school. but you know, the fact is, I, as the junior school principal, for grades K to 8, I did the hiring and I did the firing. And I like that because, and I did it with my other staff, my other supervisory
Use your
administrative staff.
intuition on
Right.
things. Let me take a break here. Duane
Sure.
Yee, he's Executive Director of Variety School. And we're talking about learning differences, not disabilities, here on Aloha United We Stand. We'll be right back after a short break.
Hi, I'm Ethan Allen. I host Likeable Science on ThinkTech Hawaii, and I do this because I care about science literacy in Hawaii. I want to spread the understanding that science is a vital and interesting part of everyone's life. I want to make sure the broadest possible spectrum of people understand the beauty and the value of science and realize that science plays out each and every day of their lives. I want you to understand that science is fun. So we bring onto this show each week guests who are scientists, from astronomers to zoologists, and we talk about what they do and how they do it. But most importantly, we talk about why you should care about their work, why you should see that their work has value and impact on your life. So I hope you'll join us Fridays, 1 p.m. here on ThinkTech Hawaii. You can watch us via live stream. You can watch us recorded on Olelo, and you can see us each week. We hope you'll join us.
Stuff.
One. Okay, during the break, Duane was telling me about the steam shovel solution. And I think it's really important to understand this
Well.
because it shows you that Variety School cannot do all the kids it needs to do.
No.
Or the community needs it to do. And in fact, some kids never have the benefit of any experience like Variety School, and they lose that benefit, and they, you know, their lives are not better for it. So tell us about the steam shovel.
Well, I've always thought if you had a giant steam shovel and you could scoop up Variety School and what it means, you know, obviously not literally, if you could take that and plant that in each district of education in the state, I think you'd have a good example of what can be done if you work intimately, individually, diligently, obviously, with each child with a learning difference. And I feel like we've had a great, it sounds arrogant, but I feel like in the 18 years that I've been at Variety School, we've had a great amount of success with our kids. And success means, one day I walked into my bank, and the teller at my bank was a young lady who, when I first arrived at Variety School, I had to keep from beating up some boys because she didn't like what
she
they,
was one of the
the way,
students.
yeah, and she was just a terrific young lady. And by the time I went to that bank frequently, it's still my bank, but she's left the business, but she had risen to be kind of the chief clerk, chief teller in that little branch, and I knew she had it in her, you know? And it's that kind of thing where they don't have to go to college. About nearly half our students go on to college, either community college, four-year colleges. In the time that I've been there, graduate school. There's a young man now who's back in Hawaii working. He's working in a bank, I think, but is on the autistic spectrum. He went to another private usually if they go to another private school on a college mission, so to speak, he went to a small private school in Honolulu, got involved in student government, got involved in athletics, and, not high level, but, for that school, varsity level, and he got a 4-year scholarship to a very fine university in Portland, Oregon. Autistic kid.
And this would not have been possible had he not been able to deal with his learning disability
If
at
you
the right
ask,
time in his
if you
life.
ask his parents, they'll say no, because I went to many an IEP meeting with his mom, and she came out of there crying every time because of their public school IEP meetings did not meet his needs.
Yeah. So this is great. I mean, you actually give them lives they might not otherwise have had.
We hope so, and really we can, again, our definition of success is definition by what the child can do.
Yeah.
And how far
Not
that
all
child
of them can go to college.
Not all of them can go to college.
Yeah.
And some of them really will be just higher functioning but stay at home kids, because we have taken some lower functioning kids, even though that's not in our definition of what we usually take. But we need tuitions, and when our enrollment is low, once in a while, and if we have a low number, we can take a lower functioning kid because it takes more effort teaching.
So on that question,
Yeah.
are there kids that you don't take?
Right.
That you won't be able to help, and what are the parameters there?
Well, as I say, lower functioning children who have very little language, they have to have, let us say that probably the lowest level is this. They have to have what we think, and we have to guess because they're young, they have the ability to have productive language, but they have very little at that time. But their receptive language, you can tell, is pretty good. And you can tell that there's something up there that's really sharp. And for example, they can follow directions at home. And sometimes, even though they don't have much language in production, they can do a 2-step receptive direction. That's pretty good for a kid who can't produce language.
Yeah.
And if mom and dad say, take the trash out to the laundry, come back and put your shoes in your room, they can do that. You start with those kinds of little things, and then you build on that.
And what about the other side of the spectrum, where they come to you, and you have identified a spectrum or a number of spectrums of kids who will be helped.
Right.
But suppose there's a kid who is actually doesn't really need it. He may have some problems. Maybe call them just psychological problems at home, what have you. He doesn't really need to be at variety school. Do you say no? What do you say?
Oftentimes we've given them the alternatives. We've made suggestions, and my program director is especially good at that. I've learned from her, as a matter of fact, because she's always been working with kids like this, and I haven't. We learn from each other, and but at any rate, we make recommendations to those parents. Right now, for example, just today I was talking to one of our mothers who was talking about her second child who was not eligible for us, and we had some comments about and perhaps advice about where she might be looking at a school she might be looking at for the second child. That just happens, those kinds of things. I mean, we're trying to help the kid, and when we know we're not able to, or when we know they're capable beyond what we do, then we say, and oftentimes we'll say, if you get enough therapies into that child's IEP in school, he'll be fine. But you might need an advocate to help you to get through the IEP system.
What is the IEP system?
Every child who has special needs in the state, and it started with public schools, have an individual educational program, an IEP. And they're supposed to be designed individually. Sometimes they're cookie cutter, though. People use cookie cutter definitions for them, and sometimes you have to. But on the other hand, you're supposed to really individualize the child. But sometimes the parents go in there and they say, well, you know, the school doesn't have enough money to have more speech therapy for my child.
So an advocate would be helpful.
Yeah, or they have, the parents have to go and pay privately
Pay themselves,
for more speech therapy. And you know, we all know that our state is not a rich state, and we're understanding of that. We're not, there's no blame there, it's just what does happen.
Well, on the macro level, we only have a minute or two left,
Okay.
and on the macro level, I wanted to, you know, it's just my own view of this is that all of education is for two purposes. One is to make a better quality of life for our citizens. And the second is to make a better population, you know, a more educated population. In a democracy, everybody, you know, needs to, you know, be productive and be involved and interact with the government, the state. I mean, ideally, doesn't happen, but ideally. And you're involved in that. You're giving better quality of life and all that. And I just, where do you see variety school and maybe hopefully more variety schools in the future with the steam shovel? You know, where do you see them playing in that formula?
Well, we have to be pragmatic because we're not rich, and we do deal with a small population. But we've taken our first steps in the last several years by expanding the range of our kids. We've taken them from our present brochure says ages 5 to 12, or 5 to 13, which is middle school. But we've had this is our 4th year, and we just went through accreditation, the second round of accreditation. We're adding a high school unit. And that's one of our first forays into that. And we now have 8 kids in that high school group. And they are kids who will not go to college, more than likely. They are kids where we'll do a lot of vocational type education and get them, and we're starting that already. And that's kind of a new thing for us, getting into what is called community-based instruction. In other words, taking them out into the community. You know, these kids, their parents oftentimes have gotten embarrassed when they're little, when they have their tantrums or whatever, or because they have less of an ability to socialize with the public. They haven't taken them out in the public that much, and we take them out to the kinds of situations that they need as young adults. So that's one of the things that we're very proud of having begun, and we think after this accreditation visit, which was just a week or so ago, we hope they'll accredit us through high school years. We're now well on our way, we think. 18
years there, Duane, and you're still expanding it, making it better. You're actually only beginning.
Yeah, that's what my board tells me sometimes, and I don't know. I just tell them I'll stick around as long as I'm useful and have, as I say, as long as I have rubber on the tires.
Yeah, that's great what you do.
But it's
Yiddish, it's a mitzvah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming down and telling us about it. It's a great thing.
Thank you. I appreciate being here, and I appreciate your helping us out.
Aloha.
Good meeting you, Jay.